He is the chosen one. You must see it.
I gave Qui-Gon my word.
Is it the chosen one?
He is.
And it is the Jedi who will stand in the way of peace.
It's not whether or not we fight.
It's how we choose to fight that matters.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
The Force will be with you, always.
And I will not be the last Jedi.
Listening to The World Between Worlds, a Star Wars podcast where we have been marathoning all of Star Wars in lead up to the rise of Skywalker. This week, a lot of stuff happens. New revelations about Agent Kallus, his role in the show in the future, Grand Admiral Thrawn inching closer towards his endgame, Maul inching closer to his endgame, and a return to Geonosis and the newest, latest, and greatest permutation on Saw Gerrera. We're going to be talking about Season 3 episodes, The Inside Man, Visions and Voices, Ghosts of Geonosis 1 and 2, and Warhead. My name's Yates.
My name's Jordan.
My name's Jessica.
And my name is Keats.
And everyone's back. Everyone's back now.
Where you been?
My goal for this week was to actually record the podcast.
Goal accomplished.
Well, we'll see.
You made it. This is making it in, so
yeah.
Now you can go if you want.
Okay.
Sure. In The Inside Man, something's going down at the gigantic Lothal Imperial factory. They're building a new type of TIE fighter that has shields, will be faster. Kanan and Ezra trying to infiltrate the factory, and it turns out Thrawn's there, and he is going to make sure that nothing stops this TIE Defender program.
Now that I have your attention, know this. Whatever you build here, you will test personally. I expect your malfunction rate to drop substantially. See to it that no one leaves or enters the facility. I wish to inspect the line for sabotage.
Jordan, we're back on Lothal.
I missed it.
I missed it too.
I miss it so much.
Yeah.
I actually like it more now. It looks cooler with all of these like Imperial occupation stuff.
I like how pretty much the entire resistance on Lothal are just sort of like C and D list characters from season 1, like the bartender and the farmers. Like those are the only people that are there in those tents. They're just these tiny little characters from season 1.
Wasn't the mustache guy the one that he threw off?
Yeah, he was the farmer that Ezra saved.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that take the brunt of the consequences in this episode, which is,
man gets exploded.
Man gets exploded right at pretty close to the beginning, like within 5 minutes of the episode.
And it's someone we know, not just an extra.
Yeah, once the episode started and they did the whole speeder chase thing, I thought it was just going to be like a throwaway thing. Like, let's just hit 190 miles per hour and then they'll explode and then we don't have to worry about these troopers right now. But it actually was the plot of the whole episode.
Those bikes are from the Imperial factory. I have people on the inside who build them to break.
You've infiltrated the assembly line? I'm impressed.
I probably wouldn't have been upset if it was just like a throwaway thing.
Yeah,
I'm really glad they expanded on it.
I also like that this is another element of resistance, slowing down the production.
Yeah, sabotaging.
Yeah, sabotaging the production.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Thrawn knows how easy the rebels have been getting away with everything, so he just shows up and is very easily able to sort of figure this out. And I think definitely he was probably the reason this episode was very good, but
because
also
Kallus arrive and Price arrive, and you're like, whatever. And then Thrawn comes up, and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
When you see Kallus and Price, you know they're gonna be like foiled again.
Yeah.
I don't know what happens. Like,
this is like the first time we ever like get to see Thrawn like in action. This is like the first time where he's being attacked at home base or whatever, where he's
super chill about it.
He's super chill, but
we just gotta adapt, and I'm gonna adapt.
I definitely really liked Thrawn in more of direct conflict with the main characters. I definitely got the impression that it mattered to him catching them, and losing them was some sort of was a loss for him. But
it's all like in the dialogue, because it's like if Thrawn still gets foiled, but he's just like, no, I didn't. I'm smart. I still won. But Price and Kallus are like, oh no, wah, wah, wah.
It felt very cinematic, like having them always cut to just him in like his little boardroom, whatever, like talking everything out and not actually doing any of the action. Like, I appreciate that he's not in any like battles. He's just like thinking about it in his little room, and then all of his minions are off like doing his bidding.
Yeah, I also think it's even just more, not more interesting, but given the context of like the number of lightsaber battles versus the number of like interdimensional chess battles we've seen across everything so far, it's cool just to like not have like a big indulgent fight scene and instead just do just like a character just sort of sitting in his office anticipating the next move and then moving forward.
Honestly, like with all the episodes now, like when this episode started with like the whole chase scene, every time there's a fight scene, I'm just like, please wrap this up. Please wrap this up.
I feel like the show is almost getting more action oriented, though. I feel like there's more action every single episode.
Well, I do feel like the action is getting more interesting. I just like know that it's like such an easy line to fall off of like what counts as interesting action or not. Like all the action I thought in the Ghost of Geonosis arc was like really interesting.
Yeah.
But I also think that we could have had this episode where it's just like another chase scene and more like fights with AT-ATs, and it would just be like kind of mediocre. Like if most of that episode took place outside as opposed to contained.
I think like the action just like pumps up your heart rate so that like the payoffs with the characters are like that much more satisfying. Like that's kind of the way that I've come to feel about it.
The other part of this episode that made it work was, I've already had a bit of a reveal previously, but this is pretty, just says it. Kallus is 100% a good guy now.
Listen to me. I am Fulcrum.
Yeah, right. You want us to believe that?
By the light of Lothal's moons.
The code phrase. He's Fulcrum?
Your friend Zeb trusted me on the Ice Moon. I saved Sabine Wren at the Fighter Academy, and now I'm trying to save you. But you have to trust me.
I mean, I was like most excited for Jessica to find out about Kallus because I know that's the shit she loves, and I knew it was coming.
And she didn't disappoint.
Well, that's my reaction.
You did. Your reaction was like 10 minutes long. Right? You kept going, yes, yes.
Throughout all these episodes, Jessica just like every 2 minutes, just oh shit,
oh
shit.
Why are you doing this? And I was like ready for Jessica to eat her words because every episode we recorded, she's like, I fucking hate Kallus. Now she's like, I fucking love him.
Well, the more the hate, the more the love.
That's true.
It's like the bigger the payoff.
It's built up enough hate where when they make him good, it's like you already have.
It's so satisfying. And they're doing exactly what Yoda fucking prophesied.
Yeah.
I love that he's good.
Not only is he like a good guy, he has been this whole season like the #1 informant for our rebels. Fulcrum.
Cool.
Yeah, and even in the previous Sabine episode, Fulcrum is the one that sends them there. I was curious if you were going to pick up on that.
I didn't pick up on it at all.
But yeah, he's been feeding them information this whole season, which is, that shows the level of commitment. He could have just walked in and said like, hey, I'm serious. But not only is he like committed to helping the rebels now, he's committed to helping the rebels from the inside, putting himself in very serious jeopardy, as is the whole reveal at the end of this episode, where Thrawn just says directly like, obviously the rebels had help, it had to be an Imperial, the pressure is on, and he says that directly to Kallus, and Kallus is just like, okay.
He knows it's Kallus, but he's just waiting like to see, like get the dirt on him so he can prove it.
Not even that. He said, like, we'll use this to our advantage. Yeah. So he's going to somehow use Kallus to find the rebels.
Well, and they hinted at that where Hera was like, well, let's just see what his real intentions are until we like trust him and like let him in more to our information. And I assume that like they're going to get to that point. But there's always twists and turns. So I didn't see it coming at all. But I feel like there was enough buildup where now looking back, I could see how, all of this stuff happened to you and you've been like culminating up to this point.
You think he still has his glowy rock?
Definitely. That
He
glowy
just,
rock.
sleeps with it.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining. I do really like the fact that Kallus is a double agent. I just think I feel like it could have been done better. The whole reveal to the rebels. I really liked the fact that they got back into the ATDB or whatever it was called, and Ezra's like, Kallus set us up. It was all a trick. But they kind of dismiss it immediately, and Kanan's like, maybe, maybe not. But I would have liked it a lot if there was like a struggle to believe whether or not Kallus was Fulcrum.
Well, I feel like I had the opposite response where like that little exchange where Ezra is like, Kallus turn on us. I felt like that was like lame because for me, which is that the way they told it is like, I feel like it's pretty unambiguous that Kallus is 100% good. Maybe that's just me in retrospect, like having watched.
Well, I like that though, yeah.
Right. So I'm so 100% aligned with Kallus at this point. Like, even when they throw him into the wall, I was like, that wasn't necessary. Like, come on, this guy's good now.
No, I feel the same
yeah,
way.
I agree.
I root for him so hard that there could have been a really interesting struggle with another character if like Ezra or even Hera chose like to be like, we need to like make sure our base is secure and everything. We can't take a chance on Kallus, even if he is good.
I agree with what you're saying. I just I think the way they did it here was just kind of like
I do think it was good. I just think it could have been a lot better. I agree with you.
They could have drawn it out more,
Yeah.
basically. They could have done more with it.
Yeah.
Just like with Ezra being, like, dark-sided
Yeah,
or whatever,
same
having
thing.
the holocron. Like, it's just such a, like, amazing twist that you want, like, to squeeze as much content out of it as possible.
Yeah,
It totally
for sure.
got me. Yeah.
Like the juicer.
I got you.
Moving on to the next one. In Visions and Voices, Ezra begins seeing Maul all over the Rebel base. He's kind of losing it. Maul has come to complete what they did not finish in the first group of episodes this season.
When you abruptly severed our connection with the holocron, you mixed up the information. You learned a bit of what I want to know, and I learned a bit of what you wanted to know. But they were fragments and memories left in my mind.
Like the location of our base.
Yes, very good. How you do learn fast, apprentice.
Look, I can't make sense of what I saw. I couldn't even describe it if I wanted to.
And that is why you need to come with me.
So they travel back to Dathomir, voodoo magic.
Voodoo magic in Star Wars. Controversial, is it not?
No,
No.
dude, they can do anything.
They've done it already.
I'm just saying this because we've done episodes in the past where you guys hate it, so I want to like get your guys' take on it in retrospect to the other episodes.
I didn't hate it. I
talking about, like,
I didn't like that we all didn't like
what's
the
it called?
duck and like that's
Yeah. Queenie Julia.
It's all about the context and the build-up.
Wait, so what's the difference?
This didn't have Queenie Julia or Jar Jar.
So what does that have to do with magic in Star Wars?
Well, it's not with magic in Star Wars. I think everyone has said a million times we love magic in Star Wars. It's just the like even the Bendu, like everyone likes the Bendu, and that's pretty magical and mystical. We also didn't like the holocrons.
I don't know. I feel like even with like the stupidest concepts, if you don't build it up enough or like give it enough like the respect that it's due for what it's introducing, like it's just gonna feel really like stupid. Like the midi-chlorian shit. Like the way that they introduced it, in my opinion, it was like, okay, what now? But then it took people like Dave Filoni to kind of like buff it out. Like I feel like constantly in this show, I really like it too because it's like they take things that were kind of little bit of a failure in the previous content and like they develop it more.
Yeah, and bringing it back into this episode, like the Night Sisters were pretty heavily like set up already, and it has meaning to Maul as like the main villain in this episode, like for him to go back there.
I didn't like love the Night Sisters just because I just found it a little boring, but I didn't like hate it either. But I liked how it was done in this episode because I felt like it's like, oh, cool, they're bringing this back.
Yeah, you're saying it feels like relevant to what the world is trying to build.
Exactly. Like, if you're gonna throw out, like, this whole planet of, like, magicians or whatever, like, I want to see it not just be, like, static. Like, I like them coming back to it and then where are they now within the context of, like, the Empire and everything like that.
I am the last survivor. My family, the Night Sisters were killed. Masterful witches they were. A threat to the Empire. I know that you can relate.
Maul's gunning for Ezra again, and Ezra goes with him again.
Again.
You seem super thrilled.
I'm just not very compelled by his character. Actually, this wasn't a bad episode with him in it. I like that they went to his planet.
I like that he wasn't a reckoning force in Ezra's life. I like that he was adding direction. He wasn't just being trying to cause conflict with people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
fine.
I really liked the sequence where he just sort of says, "Hey, I'm going off to do some really important stuff. You should come with me. We get along. This works." He doesn't seem in that moment to be very malicious. I mean, obviously it's worked to his favor that Kanan and Sabine were possessed, but he wasn't planning on that happening. It just kind of happened. He's like, well, there's a perfect opportunity for me to get out of here. And that seemed to me, his sort of final plea to get Ezra over seemed to be the most genuine he's been in the show.
Forget the past! Forget your memories! Forget your attachments. Our futures converge on a planet with 2 suns. We can walk that path together as friends, as brothers.
My friends are trapped in there because of us. I can't just leave them.
I really did like that little bit of emotion that we got out of Maul when he was like, I was gonna make you a brother, and you see him look down
I'm so
and
disappointed.
that he misses his boy Savage. I really like that.
That was I think the best performance we've gotten out of Maul so far. I totally felt the emotion from his voice.
Yeah, that's what I was saying with him being the most genuine. I feel like that's the most genuine moment we get, period. Except for maybe the end of that storyline, but I think that was just a pure dialogue scene that worked just based off of.
I thought all the voice acting was really good in this episode.
And I also really loved Ezra's response, which was very direct. And then, once Maul's gone, all Ezra does is he just, takes a very deep breath and he's like, okay, on to the next thing. And that's how the episode sort of wraps up and how he gets back into it.
And also, I'm glad that they didn't just leave that little holocron storyline where it is.
The end of the other holocron episode, we didn't even really, we all were kind of on a different page than the creators on what actually happened, because this episode basically says that Ezra chose to break off the connection, and that rendered the holocrons inert, and that messed up the vision or something, and we didn't really, none of us got that.
When we were watching the episode, I was like, I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, I don't remember it happening that way either.
Well, didn't it explode?
It did explode, yeah.
Well, maybe it was because he looked away that it exploded. We just didn't get to see him look away.
Yeah, it's just one of those things I think they just probably did but didn't explain clearly.
Because I don't think the completion of the holocron vision would end with the holocrons being destroyed naturally.
If they just left it there, that would have been a bad ending. And I like the idea of searching for Obi-Wan and the race to find Obi-Wan type of thing. That's exciting to me.
And Maul's not wrong. Their goal is
the same. Yeah, but his goal beyond the most immediate goal is what's in question. What's Maul gonna do after he kills the Sith?
He always doesn't say the whole truth.
Yeah.
He knew the spirits were gonna come out and try to kill them, but he never mentioned that.
Right. I think the one thing that I could say for sure that Maul wants out of Ezra is some sort of progeny or legacy, just continue on in some form his experience and his identity, find some young person to project it onto. I kind of feel like that was the deal with Kira, and whatever they left off with that in Solo was just I have someone to pass on all of my knowledge to, and because Maul can't live forever and he's getting old, and what is exactly he want?
He's really persistent on trying to get Ezra, and Ezra's not a follower, but he always goes forward with whatever's put in front of him, with kind of not questioning it.
Yeah,
at all.
I think he's just sort of like
he does that
sticks
a
his
lot.
neck out for people in general. Like regardless of their background, like he does it in the upcoming episode, and
maybe it's like because he sees a little bit of himself in them.
yeah, and like everyone.
I also liked that little scene with Sabine where she kind of voiced what the audience feels, where she's like, why does Ezra keep trusting Darth Maul? Like, good question. We're all thinking that.
Yeah.
And then Kanan kind of like answers it for the audience. Is like, he doesn't, but he's like kind of in too deep in this like kind of like abusive relationship, and now he's trying to repair it.
Yeah, I like that Kanan points out that, like, he says something to the effect of Ezra's only with Maul right now to, like, risk his skin for the sake of us and the rebellion. Like, he cares about us so much that he's willing to put himself with Maul.
Yeah, and I think that's just even another point where, like, Kanan is trusting Ezra to make that decision for himself. Like, I imagine if that happened in season 1 or even season 2, Kanan would be like, Ezra, I'm putting my foot down. Like, the risks far outweigh the potential reward for, going on this mission. We'll find another way to do it, and I'm going to have to step in and take charge here. We're at the point now where their relationship has advanced enough, and Ezra's has proven himself enough.
He doesn't even feel like a kid anymore, really.
No, I don't see him as a kid anymore either. Even Sabine, honestly, all the characters, like, even though there will be like sort of like childlike fun time humor, overall I do see them more as adults. In The Ghosts of Geonosis, the Ghost crew returned to the planet they visited in Season 2. The Geonosians have mysteriously vanished, and a team was sent, including old Clone Wars and Rogue One character Saw Gerrera.
It was a bug. Had to be. He got my unit using the same tactics. I was the only survivor.
Yeah, the more I hear, the more I don't like this. We should go back and report to Hera.
Back! No, wait! You can't. That bug is the key to finding out what's going on here. Don't you understand what's at stake? We know the Empire wiped out the entire population of this planet. We need to find out why. The Empire is hiding something important, and that bug knows what it is.
I really, really like this episode.
Okay, what's the most important factor for you here, and what is it that makes it compelling to you?
To be honest, I guess you could say it's kind of just like a combination of all of it. The performances, the story structure, the music, the unique and original way that they decided to show Click-Clack's point of view, the way that the camera was always at a low angle whenever they were talking about Click-Clack, so you felt the oppression, just little things like that. But overall, it was just the pace of it. I really loved the slow burn effect, but also there's one specific scene that stands out to me directly. It's when they are discussing how to get across to the other side of the tunnel. And just the way that it ends with like the stinger and you hear Forrest Whitaker say exactly, and then it does a hard cut, a moment. It just felt like something that was filmed. It felt like something that was like, it happened on set, like him saying exactly, even if it wasn't scripted, and then they decided to keep it in the movie anyway. It didn't feel planned. It just felt very natural, and I felt like that's like something that this episode...
It felt like almost like a movie is what you're saying, like the pacing of it and how it went.
Yeah, and just like the character choices, like I like how Kanan was constantly trying to like make sure everybody was safe, but everyone wanted to keep going. I like the fact that Saw gets reunited with Captain Rex, and Ezra and Kanan are the two Jedi that get to meet Saw Gerrera.
I think in general, this whole season, they've done a good job at like finding the right characters to put in specific episodes. Like, I don't feel like, more often than not, I don't feel like they waste a character or anything. Like someone's just included just to be included and says 2 lines. Like, even if that's the case, it's normally in service of something better, like even like the action
episode?
Sequence. Well, I'll just contain it to this episode. But yes, I think all the episodes this season were an example of that. But even just the small bit with Zeb and Sabine, the little action sequence they had, it didn't feel like we were wasting Sabine and Zeb by including them there.
Quick aside about like, since I don't think that will get brought up again, I loved how when Sabine was like going up on her little jetpack, Ezra was like, "Oh shit!" Like those.
Yeah, he's hyping his girl.
Yeah, he's hyping his girl. He's like, those Empire are in trouble. Like, they made her to be such a badass. I'm like, you know what? She is.
Yeah.
No, totally.
We talked about this in one of the episodes you weren't in, but I feel like even though Sabine hasn't, like, had an amazing episode this season, they're not doing these crazy misfires that they did the first 2 seasons.
Agreed.
Like, she's being used well and is like, actually, she's been pretty badass consistently this whole season of being like a good fighter. That, what we were saying before about the slow burn, also like the action I thought consistently was pretty good. Jessica, I know you really loved the moment where Kanan like creates the bridge.
That was amazing. I love that. I love that. One thing that I didn't love so much about him in this episode was it was kind of anticlimactic because he kept being like, I don't think we should go any further. Right. And I'm like, oh man, Kanan must be right. He keeps saying we shouldn't go any further. Like, what are they gonna run into?
That's a good point.
And then like they never run into anything.
Yeah.
Like
or
it never becomes like, oh my god, he like sent something with the Force.
Or it just isn't the source of much conflict within the group. I was just more in the mindset of like, there's a difference in leadership style, I guess, between Kanan and Ezra.
Why did they even put that in there?
Yeah, and I don't know. That it would have been nice to see, Kanan and Ezra more in conflict with that. And Kanan also just wasn't. He was like in the episode a lot, but he wasn't really at the center of any sort of drama. Really, the main difference was like Ezra and Saw, and Ezra trying to empathize and learn through Saw.
If that egg is the last chance to save his people, then we have to help him protect it.
I know some people in this rebellion don't want to admit it, but we are in a war, and war is loss.
What do you think Saw brings to the table in this episode?
As Hera said, like he's a different type of rebel, or he's like coming at being at a rebel from a different ideological point of view. As is her dad in a way. And I like seeing the different flavors of the resistance.
Yes, I agree. I thought that was really cool. On the flip side of that, though, there's like this big driving antagonism that sort of bubbles up by the halfway point of the second episode, where he, threatens Click Clack.
Saw, you don't want to do this.
I know you believe you're doing the right thing, but
Our enemy shows no mercy. Neither can we.
If you harm that egg, you're helping the Empire wipe out the last of his kind. The last of his family.
I don't care.
I really love the fact that it's handled in a direction of that he's trying to help them, but he's at the end of it, he's just not helping them, and he can't see that. I think that that's just like a territory that they haven't explored before on the show, and I think it's just really refreshing to get that. And the fact that, like you said, it's like not just a character we know, but a character we know being represented by somebody with so much prestige just makes it all the more interesting.
That's true. And I also like, it's not even just that he's not helping them. From his point of view, like, they're not letting him help them. Yeah. Like he's like, to him, this is a very clear line that's drawing him towards a specific goal and specific actions. And the rebels, his own comrades, are like the obstacles for him. And also, I like the moments where he sort of gives in, or accommodates them, like even when Kanan says, like, we'll make a deal, we'll meet halfway, we will interrogate them and bring them back, but then we will bring them back here.
The whole reason why he is this character, why he is so aggressive and extreme in his ways, is because of the tragedies from his past. And he doesn't even realize that so many of those characters have that in common with him. Like with Rex, like all of his brothers are dead. Ezra, all of his family is dead. Kanan, all of the Jedi are wiped out. He doesn't even see that because he's so blindsided by like what is like his motivation for the Empire. The Stela reveal, where we get to see Forrest Whitaker react to his sister on the hologram, really emotionally powerful for me. Like, I really empathize with Saw Gerrera.
That whole moment with the hologram of Stela, I feel like it deserves to be said that, like, it is an example of something that, even as a concept, that people who are into the lore and the canon, it's sort of like a treat for them. Like, you have like a C-list character from Clone Wars brought into a movie, and then you get the opportunity to have this little story that connects the both of them and has like an Academy Award winning actor, Forrest Whitaker, like referring to an episode from the cartoon like that was on Cartoon Network.
It's like at its best.
Yeah, and
at its best.
Yeah,
it's
and
like
it's
this.
definitely very rewarding.
I appreciated the fact that Rex had that moment where he explained that the Geonosians were separatists and they built the bombs that killed his sister. And, you know, we've had similar moments like that where it's like, why is this character so, like, gung-ho against this, like, one species? But I also felt like it went dangerously close to being like, why is this black man so angry at many points? Like, they just made him so, like, intensely different than, like, any of the other characters would have acted. And I just felt like it almost underserved, like, his specific character. Like, I like that his character is a person of color, like so many other of the rebels are, but also that he is more radical and comes at it more from that point of view. And they made it, like, they kind of, like, boiled down the radical part of it and made him just, like...
Not a nice
like,
guy.
Insanely angry.
Yeah.
I felt like it was playing into a stereotype.
I think I could come to an agreement on that, but that doesn't really have anything to, like, he was this character prior to Rebels. I feel like this was, the way that they wrote him was consistent with his whole track record.
I think that they could have wrote him, like, with a more even hand here.
I agree, and it sucks. I'm going to try not to gang up on you, Keats, but I actually didn't particularly like these episodes because I thought...
I like the episodes.
I didn't particularly like them because I thought Saw Gerrera as a character, it was just, the message was a little too ham-fisted, and I felt like it was hard for me to see his point of view. Yeah. They bring him back at a later point, and I remember feeling like that very much changed my opinion of him, and I thought they nailed it in that next upcoming iteration. But for me, I felt that just like the whole pointing the gun to the egg, I felt like they just pushed it a little too far, and then to have that contrasted with making Click Clack this doe-eyed, really sad, it was just
like
felt
a bullying situation.
It felt like the storytellers were like being emotionally manipulative. That's how I felt watching all that drama play out. There were lots of parts of it that I liked, and little moments where I thought Forrest Whitaker's performance was very good.
And I like the fact that, like, when they were on the ship and Ezra's like, no, don't, stop. Like, I love that side of Ezra. So that kind of, like, was a return to form for Ezra. And also I felt like it was realistic. Like, realistically, there is going to be, like, a lot of moments of just pure chaos like that when you get all of these, like, strong personalities together.
That's
and we
true.
don't see that often. And I also liked how at the end of the episode when he sees poison gas tanks, which is super fucking intense, that they were poisoned, like, and I guess they're supposed to be like ants or something.
Yeah, they're modeled off their termites.
Yeah, so the fact that they're like killed with poison gas, I don't know if that's making like an ecological statement, but also it's like kind of making like, you can't help but tie that into world history. But he like gives like a little bit of a speech.
Those canisters are all we need to prove that the Empire wiped out its people. Everyone loses family in war, even the enemy. The Geonosians deserve the same chance to rebuild that we do.
Go on, Click Clack. You're free.
Like he has like a philosophy clearly about this.
I also really liked the resolution to the whole thing at the end, where even though I described some of the dramatic beats as feeling maybe a little sensationalist, the ending of it is sort of very just like direct. It's like Kanan's like, well, you know, we met Saw Gerrera. Saw Gerrera has different opinions than us, but that's going to happen. And we found at the end of this that he was more aligned with us than we thought initially. Not like they're like, oh, we're never trusting that guy again. Like, we're never working with him. Yeah. No, it was just like, well, you know, this was a little messy, but, you know, everyone came out okay at the end. So that's what matters.
It reminded me of, like, the best parts of the Clone Wars show for me, which is that you get to see, like, the blurred lines between, like, well, we're on this person's side, but we don't agree with them, but it'll have to do. And, like, morality isn't as clear as you think it is. I do think that with him, kind of like the resolution of it at the end of the day was like a little too quick.
I agree.
And clean. I personally think he's such a cool character.
Right.
And like I want to see it be like easier to empathize with him.
It's not that I don't like Saw Gerrera. I just felt like this episode didn't put him in a context where I felt like he got a fair shot. I felt like as the audience, I was being compelled to not trust him.
I was like, it's funny because I agree with everything that you said, but that's the exact reason why I thought the episode was so good, was because the only thing I don't agree with necessarily is him holding the gun to the egg. Mm-hmm. I felt like he was being pushed to his limit because nobody would get where he was coming from. Mm-hmm. So he felt like the only way for me to get across what I want and for them to understand me is to just up the stakes even more and to force them to trust me.
Right. Mm-hmm. I guess that's a fair point, is that also maybe it's just like easier to see his point of view if we've watched Rogue One and his appearance in Clone Wars. Like we kind of more understand where he's coming from, rather than if from the prism of Ezra and Kanan and how they see him in a specific way different than what we see.
Imagine if you never watched Rogue One and you saw this episode, and then that would essentially act as a twist in the episode where he's holding the gun to the egg, because you are familiar with this character from Clone Wars who was always had an attitude, but he would always align himself with the right side at the end. And then here he's going way too over his head, and you're thinking to yourself, wow, I didn't know this character was even capable of doing something so evil.
Yes, I think that's a good point. I also think, now switching back to Keats' side, at a meta level, they acknowledge it in the episode, but it's not particularly obvious. Jessica didn't catch it, but the Death Star. All this is about the Death Star. Everything is about the Death Star. Rogue One is all about the Death Star.
And they do.
Saw Gerrera's story in Rogue One, as small as it is all about the Death Star. And so even though he's taking extreme steps, as the audience, he's right. If they had brought Click-Clack to the rebellion and interrogated him, they probably would have been able to get a translator or someone that would have been able to say,
"You're fucking right."
They would have been able to say, the Death Star is being in construction. This is where it was. We can track it from Geonosis to wherever it is now.
It's currently not operational. We can prevent the death of billions.
Yeah, and so in that regard, he's paranoid, but he is right. So
that's why he's so compelling.
On that level, I didn't really consider that before, but I do think that's something that puts him in a better light. But I still stand by everything I said before, that I wish there was more.
I also really like how, on top of the large story and saga that is the Skywalker story, they also do that with the Death Star.
Right.
And it's the Death Star is not just a plot point for a movie or two. It's this through line that's very important, that builds up, and there's lots of pieces throughout so much content, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I do too. I think
it also works as a visual aid for just the state of mind that people in power are thinking about. It's because it's carried over is because it's so easy to apply the idea of the Death Star to anybody at any point in time of power. How can I attain it? Kill billions. I'm in power.
Yeah, just the Death Star means power in Star Wars.
Exactly. Yeah.
Obviously, he didn't know that it would become all of this when he wrote about the Death Star, but that is such a big deal if you really think about what it is.
It was such a huge part of Palpatine's ultimate end game for the galaxy. To have all these threads sort of building up to it is very cool.
I think it's better because just the idea of having just the Death Star and a one-off, it's a plot point of a movie. It's I think that it makes it a lot more believable in world, and also within the context that's building up of lots of people still trying to justify to themselves the Empire is not so bad. No, they are constantly building death technology
and are willing to commit genocide to cover up what they're doing, as is the case with the Geonosians in this episode. Warhead begins with an Imperial recon droid sent to the Rebel base. It is there to gather information, see if the Rebels are on there. Zeb is in charge of protecting the base, and this is sort of a wacky little episode where, with some high stakes, there's this is a Star Wars nuclear warhead involved. Zeb and the droids have to figure out a way to get this thing off the planet. Jaydan, this episode features the boy, AP5. One of your faves. He hasn't been around most of the season.
Very true.
Were you upset by this?
No. But it was nice to see him, though. He had some good moments where he actually made me laugh. And I like him and Zeb together.
Proton torpedoes, 47. Blaster recharges, 820. Thermal detonators, 62 crates. Ion mines, 32.
Did he just scan and inventory this entire area? He's better at your job than you are.
I seriously doubt that. However, he appears to be a logistics droid and could prove useful as my assistant.
Seems harmless enough. I guess we could take in another stray.
That was kind of, I think, the thing that keeps the episode going was sort of their dynamic.
I think it was charming just because of like where the characters are at. Like AP5 doesn't respect anyone, and Zeb has like it seems like he has a really high tolerance for people. I think he's just learned how to be more tolerant as Ezra came aboard the Ghost Crew, because at that point in season 1 he seemed a lot less tolerant of people. And so I think just he's become more of a parental figure than we've really given him credit for in the past.
I was craving a Zeb episode again. I've learned to really like his episodes, and he's like great with people. He's so great at making enemies into friends, just like he did with Agent Kallus.
And thinking on like kind of a meta level, like Zeb hasn't had an episode all season, I believe. And I think this is the last 100% Zeb focused episode that we get. And in it, he's kind of like purposefully like he's been sort of benched, and he's like, okay, like you're here, you have an important job, you're taking care of the entire base, but all the important stuff we're going off to do our own thing, and you stay here and protect the base.
They've been kind of like not knowing what to do with him.
I mean, everyone gets affected by the events of season 4, but he seems to be, and me and Keats mentioned this in the last episode, which you guys haven't had the chance to read yet, but Zeb seems to be one of the characters that at this point, his character has been very crystallized at this point.
Yeah.
Like, there's not going to be a further evolution of Zeb. He's had his arc, and it was one of the most consistently rewarding, I think, of the first 2 seasons was Zeb's transformation, and then how he's able to, you know, in a newly enlightened place, transform Kallus as well. He's had his big victory at this point, and this is just kind of like a small little episode with him, just sort of, I guess, catching up with him. And you might
even say that Kallus's arc is almost an extension of Zeb's arc.
Yeah, kind of. I would say that. I think that they relied on that joke too many times of AP5 being like, Zeb, you're an idiot. Like the first 2 times it was cute, but then they just kept doing it again and again and again, and that's a reoccurring thing in the Zeb episodes, is like they're very joke-heavy episodes.
Yeah, I liked all the bits with AP5 about his job, and I think that was also a cute little bit where the droid comes in, and the droid, the infiltrator droid, can like basically do AP5's job for him, and he's like, this is great, like you'll be my new assistant that does all my work for me, and I get all the credit. So I thought that was cute, and so even to what you were saying before, Jessica, I really liked when the droid arrives, like Zeb is just like, oh, great, like, okay, you're in the family now, too. Like, why not? Like, you know, another droid, like, you know, let's put you to work. And,
partial
you know,
to his boredom, where he was like, oh, this is something to do. If it was a normal instance where he wasn't, like, in charge and bored out of his mind, he probably would have been more cautious. Like, hey, maybe I shouldn't bring this random droid on our base.
So I think that the coolest part about the episode to me was just the fact that this character concept is just a giant homage to the Iron Giant. Like
yes, I was thinking that.
Yeah, like even the light in his eyes, like the shot is exactly the same. The dent in his forehead is the same.
Yeah. They didn't really do much with that, but it was just kind of like, it was still cool.
It was just a nod to the audience.
I've never even seen that movie before, and I immediately was like, this reminds me of Iron Giant.
Oh my God.
From like
one of my
previews.
favorites.
I've
my
heard
top 10.
So good.
Yeah, it's very good.
The director, Brad Bird, I think he was going to direct episode 7, but he had like a dilemma between 2 films and he chose the other one. I've always like really wanted to see his vision for Star Wars.
Yeah, we're film enthusiasts.
It's a secret now for some reason.
We don't talk about it anymore.
Just the animation, the whole transformation sequence. I also really was drawn
it's
to
so threatening.
It is very threatening, and I was very drawn to the way he moves. Like he's sort of like plodding around, but he's also sprinting with these super long legs, and he's very tall.
And not to name drop accelerators. But, you know, there are droids and accelerators.
You sure you've seen it?
I'm sure I have. And they make, like, the same noise as him.
After all this,
So
when
that's,
we
like, all I
finally
thought of.
rewatch Accelerators, we're going to see, like, Dave Filoni, like, assistant animator in the credits at the end.
Oh, that'd be
after
so
all
cool.
of these Hot Wheels connections. But in any case, see.
I also really love it's like sequence in the episode that's just like the classic zombie reveal scene where it's just Chopper seeing the infiltrator droid feed on the gong droid.
Oh, that's what I was
and
going
it
to
does
say
the
was my
head
favorite.
turn.
Yeah, I guess that's one theme across all of them is there's like kind of
It's kinda
sprinklings of horror elements throughout
Yeah.
all of them and just sort of like, you know, entering a gigantic space or a very claustrophobic space and like not knowing what's around the corner.
Well, imagine, like, viewing it as Chopper and as a droid.
Yeah.
Like, that's him seeing, like,
Yeah.
another human eat like a human for us.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just like the gonk droid's, like, guts are, like, out everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, shit.
I like these episodes because even though the stakes are lower, they're actually, I feel like they're actually higher. Because, like, when the stakes are everyone could get murdered or, like,
Maimed or something.
Yeah, or, like, the Inquisitors are going to, like, kill the Jedi. It's like, okay, but that's not going to happen. But
Right.
when the stakes are, like, their base could be found out, like, I really do feel like that could happen.
Yeah.
And that would be, like, a really bad thing for them.
And that's the ultimate consequence at the end of the episode is that
Yeah.
in a roundabout way, you know, it does put Thrawn closer to finding the base. They kind of did this in season 1 where, like, they'll sort of, like, check in at the end of the episode
Yeah.
with the villain who's, like, sort of, like, getting closer. But I think here it's, like, really well done where, like, even a smaller episode like this or Iron Squadron last week, like, Thrawn didn't need to be in these episodes, but he does show up.
And he makes it better.
He makes it better, and even if he's just at the very end, like, we watch him gather this information and use it to his advantage
Because
already.
Thrawn is playing chess, whereas all the other villains were playing checkers.
Ooh, they're just trying to get that promotion.
Yeah.
5 episodes completed. We did a lot. I think we all covered all the big things, and there was a lot of big things, and I'm happy. Next week, we're going to be talking about Trials of the Darksaber, Heroes of Mandalore, and I'm trying to, I know what it is. I know what it is.
What it is from Imperial Eyes. You are welcome, Yates.
All 3 of these episodes coming up next week, extremely important to the plot of the show. I honestly kind of ones I've been waiting for since we started. So I'm super pumped.
It's a good arc. I like it a lot.
It's good. My name is Yates.
My name is Keats.
My name is Jessica.
My name is Jordan.
May the Force be with you. Oh.